Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of Newsround for Anfield Index. The World Cup was interesting last night, wasn't it? Existing Liverpool players doing very well, but we're probably going to talk about a top target and his performance, which, depending on which end of Dolly Parton you liked, people rated it as a 9, people rated it as a 5, so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about other transfer targets. We'll talk about various things LFC. I'm your normal host, Dave Davis, coming to you from a pretty sunny Edinburgh, so fingers crossed it stays that way. I'm delighted to be joined by a new contributor here to Anfield Index in the form of Sim. Sim, how are we, mate?
Yeah, looking good, man. Nice weather, like you said. I'm in Wolverhampton, so the sun's decided to come out. Excited to talk some Liverpool news, man, or some Liverpool talk. I had a lot of players in the World Cup playing yesterday, so it's a nice little Fabrizio Bomber this morning. So it's exciting times, man.
Yeah, absolutely, which we will come to, of course, people. And even as a start, it's fascinating to see the chat panel there. LFC Jerry, I'm guessing that's Diomande, saw a bad game from him, didn't know he's worth that much money. But Paul counted straight away with bad players. Also, every player has bad games. Don't let that affect you. So, of course, we're going to be talking about that. But as we get into it, Sim, we should actually talk, of course, about the players we actually have, the players that played last night. You had Florian Wirtz for Germany against Ivory Coast. Of course, you had 3 Reds, didn't you, in the form of Cody Gakpo, the skipper, and Ryan Gravenberch. But this man, Cody Gakpo, he's a funny player in a way for me. But as that tweet says there yesterday, in a battering of Sweden, it's fair to say, Sim, 8 to 9 minutes, 2 goals, 1 assist, 4 shots on target. What did you make of Cody Gakpo yesterday?
He's just a bit of an enigma, isn't he? Like, I think we've always said, like, Cody Gakpo playing for Netherlands is a completely different Cody Gakpo that plays for Liverpool. But it's nice to see that, he's able to perform, at some level, obviously for his national team. I think for us, it's just a shame that we don't see it often enough for Liverpool. A lot of talk, whether he's going to stay or go. But it's good to see that he is performing, and it was against good opposition as well. Sometimes I wonder, are we too harsh on him? But like yesterday, I thought we saw the better parts of Cody Gakpo's games. So it was a very good performance from him. I think, like you said, 2 goals and assists. There is a good player in there. So it's good to see him performing.
Yeah, it's the funny one, because even Daniel Sturridge tweeted and people sort of, let's say, took umbrage, but there were mixed reactions to this. Gakpo different for the Netherlands man, way more confident and decisive with the decisions, dribbling and shot selection. Bagged 2 and an assist, love to see it. This is going to sound like I'm bagging on the player a bit. And listen, you can't really have a go at him too much, because I think he's equalled Arjen Robben's record now as well for goals at major tournaments. So you've got to take that into account. But this is what I struggle with, Sim. Did you see for the first assist, Cody Gakpo stood up his man and he didn't cut inside. He didn't just blam it. Did you actually see he went on the outside and crossed the ball?
I can't believe he can do it.
Was it not a bit of you, seriously, that was like, where's that been? That's what we thought we'd see more of this season.
Yeah, literally that. It's just like, we have a joke in one of our group chats where we're just like, he's got something programmed in his mind that even if he wants to go on the outside, he has to go on the inside. So to see him do it and see that he's capable of doing it, fantastic. But it's just that we don't see it enough in a red shirt. And obviously to us, that's what matters most. So it must be a mental thing. I'm not sure, whether that's what Arne Slot wanted from him last season, but I struggle to believe that. So it's just, I can't believe he's able to do it, to be honest.
Yeah, and then, because it does sound like I'm ragging on him a bit here, but even for his second goal, because his first one, I don't mind seeing that. They're coming in at the back post. That's great. No problem with that at all. Was there not a part of you, though, when you watched the second goal, were you not thinking, like, why are you letting Cody Gakpo cut in on his right? He does that 8,000 times a day for Liverpool. You know he's going to cut in on his right and hit the shot. It was just like, it was brain-dead defending from Sweden, wasn't it, really?
Yeah, it was. Like, anyone that's watched Gakpo knows that his first instinct is always going to be to cut in. So whether that's just a mental thing from their players that have just switched off, or they've just failed to acknowledge that this is what this guy does. Like, everyone in world football knows that's what his first instinct is. So the fact that they didn't clock onto it, it was surprising to me.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe Hobbit Hosky makes a good point there. People play often enough, but you watch any Cody Gakpo footage, you would know that. But listen, we're not going to rag on him too much because 2 goals, 1 assist. And even if there's some in the chat panel who clearly want him gone, it's not going to hurt his price tag at all if that is the case as well. This man, it's weird. People will talk about certain players that, I mean, Sweden got battered by Holland, let's not pretend. But as the stats show there, 90 minutes from Isak, an assist, 27 out of 33 accurate passes, 4 chances created and a successful dribble, even a nutmeg on Virgil van Dijk at the same time. Mate, is it weird to say Sweden got battered? But I was quite impressed with Isak, by the way.
Yeah, I don't think that's a crazy thing to say at all, because I watched the performance and his link-up play was fantastic. He held the ball well, he's able to pick out teammates. And this is what I want to see from Isak, just whilst, we're kind of going into, before pre-season.
Yeah.
Last season, like, we knew kind of he wasn't fit, he had the injury problem. And then, so I don't want to be too harsh on him, but this is what we know Isak can do. And if he's doing it in a Sweden team that isn't the strongest, imagine what he can do in this new system, Liverpool. So I think to see that for, 90 minutes, even though he didn't leave the game with a goal, sometimes you've got to look at a player's all-round performance and to see what he can contribute. At least he tried to get involved in the game. And, sometimes people have been a bit critical of him, especially last season, saying that he's isolated. But with the right system and knowing that he can drop deep and, hold the ball and pick out teammates, I think that's the kind of performance I wanted to see from him, to be honest.
Yeah, it was interesting because a lot of the talk, and we've probably all done it last season, we said, how are we going to build a 9 into the system? We don't play with a 9. Now, I know Isak is a 9 by all accounts, but he dropped deep a lot, didn't he? He linked the play quite often, went out to the left. And even that pass for, I think it was Elanga, wasn't it, that got the goal for Sweden? Right. It was perfectly weighted. Like his all-round game, he can still be a danger in different ways, can't he?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, his range of passing is actually decent. And I remember that being so at Newcastle too. So that's one thing that we would have looked at before we signed him, not just the killer instinct in front of goal, but his ability to, play in that too with Gyökeres, drift out onto the left. And he slid Gyökeres in a couple of times. And, that's obviously a different story in terms of that player. But yeah, his all-round performance, I was so impressed with it, just that he can occupy defenders. Defenders do not want to drop. So they don't want to follow him into that number 10 position. He drifts out wide. Yeah, it was a fantastic performance. It's just a shame that he couldn't leave with a goal. But we saw 2 performances now from Isak. The one where he's the first game where he scored twice, was it? Yeah. And then yesterday, a completely different performance against better opposition. So I think it's exciting if you're a Liverpool fan.
And I think, if I'm right, I might be making this up, but I think he's got on 4 goal contributions for the tournament as well. So
yeah,
a lot that we're liking there as well. These man, I struggle. Some people really ragged on this performance, and I didn't get it. Germany were pretty poor. They were saved by Undav, weren't they, as the super sub? Don't get me wrong. But I looked at Wirtz in this, and as the stats say there, 2 chances created, 1 big chance created, 9 passes into the final third. He works his nuts off as well. 9 recoveries there. I know Germany didn't play well, and they were rescued at the end. I actually thought Florian Wirtz had a decent game and did some dangerous things.
Yeah, I enjoyed his performance. It wasn't as good as the first game, but he's always making himself available to pick up the ball. He's always trying to get teammates involved. I do think that sometimes we look at his price tag as a justification for his performances, and maybe he's not the assist machine that we assumed we were getting. Maybe we'll see a different side to that this season, but he's always trying to get involved in the game. I know people say that, he backs out of challenges, but as the data's kind of shown there as well, like he presses a lot. Yeah. He does try and defend from the front. So he's just one that splits opinion right now. Some people don't think he's cut out for the Premier League. I disagree. I think we're going to see the real Wirtz this season. He was just a bit unlucky with maybe positioning, system, and even the players around him. And I think even last night's game, and I spoke about this morning, Germany play with essentially 3 players that are positionless. So you got Havertz, Wirtz, and Musiala. So look at the difference it made when Undav came on, and having a willing runner that can crash the box. It changes the whole dynamic of the team. Whereas if you've got positionless players that just want to float around, they kind of run into each other. No one's really trying to get into the box and make that run. Whereas if you've got a natural striker whose first instinct is always, okay, how can I get into a goal scoring position? We're going to see a different side to him. So I don't think it was a bad performance at all. I don't think it was the greatest, but like I said,
Yeah.
he's always trying to impact the game. Whether it works or not, that's a different story. But I was quite impressed.
Yeah, I was. It wasn't world class. It wasn't one that said it alike, but there were some nice moments. He did make things happen as you always want. Now, we're going to have to come to this player for a couple of reasons because it is the one that everyone's talking about. So we'll do his performance, then we'll talk the bid and the price tag. I mean, this was an interesting one from Opta this morning. They tweeted out, Yan Diamande's completed 8 dribbles through his first 2 FIFA World Cup games. The only teenager to complete more in that is Lionel Messi in 2006. And funnily enough, Daniel Sturridge again put in that Diomande causing all kinds of trouble. Africa's always producing amazing attackers, and he's next up. Love his game. And funnily enough, the ITV pundits, I know they were quite like, he's living up to the hype. He's a danger and he's a real threat. Him, to be honest, probably dropped a bit in the second half. And we'd be lying if we said there weren't times where he miscontrolled it. It didn't quite happen. But overall, what did you make of Yan Diomande in this one?
Yeah, obviously not as good as the first game that they played in against Ecuador. Was it Ecuador?
Yeah,
it was Ecuador, wasn't it? Yeah. That was a lightning performance, and again, it's another game where I feel like his teammates are struggling to get him on the ball, and I think sometimes we got to look at these little tangible bits as well, where he's not playing for the strongest nation in terms of ball retention or even quality, respectfully. But when he does get on the ball, he does try and make the right decision, whether it's to try and beat his man or to just retain the ball and, let the team settle down a little bit. When you're playing for a team that doesn't get the ball as often as you'd like, sometimes it's maybe not the best thing to try and beat your man and try and force something to happen. But we did see, with their goal, he beat his player, he got the ball into a dangerous position, and the goal came as a result of that, even if he didn't directly get the assist. And I think it's worth mentioning as well, he played as a left winger yesterday before obviously moving back to the right, and that was to accommodate Diallo. I think it was a mixed performance. I'm not going to be too harsh on the kid because A, he's 19, B, he's playing for a weekend nation, respectfully. And we're going to see a different side to him. Liverpool wouldn't have even looked at this player if they haven't watched all 38 games of him in the Bundesliga. So it's just, we can be a little bit reactionary, but I'm excited by the prospects.
Yeah, it was funny because even, and if I'm pronouncing this right, LFC Jerry, but with a 3 instead of an E, I saw a bad game from him. I don't know if he's worth that much money. We can be a bit reactionary, or people can, on these types of things. It's all opinions, don't get me wrong. But those who know Kevin Hatchard, he tweeted this, and I thought this was bob on. Weirdly, I didn't think Yan Diomande was anywhere near his best against Germany. Some loose touches, poor decisions, and he ran out of steam. But he still made the opening goal and tortured Kimmich at times. His 5 out of 10 is a lot of players' 8 out of 10. That's a bit of it. Was his overall performance great? No, I think we'd be lying if we said that. But
absolutely,
and I think Polo is correct there. And it's that phrase I'd use: stop, start. It can be a bit like that, but the top end of that. Did you see where he stood Kimmich up and then just burned him down the line? He's got that. Dangerous at any time, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think this is what's worth remembering. Like, we watched Mohamed Salah play for such a long time in a Liverpool shirt. He didn't affect the game for the full 90 minutes every week. There were times when he was just quiet, and then he could just pop up with a moment, exactly like Diomande did last night, and affect the game. And that's what we need from players. I mean, ideally, we want to enjoy the performance the full 90 minutes. We understand that we're going to pay above 100 million for him. And I get it. And, but he's not setting the price. He's a 19-year-old kid who's going to have a little bit of inconsistent moments. So I get why people maybe are looking at the price tag, but I think it's so hard to judge players based on the price tag they haven't set. But like you said, at times he was destroying Kimmich. And that's an exciting prospect. And Kimmich is one of he's one of Germany's best ever players. I think he's still got it. I was watching him play yesterday. And at times, he's dictating the game and, he's so comfortable. But look at what Diomande did to him to create that goal.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to forget, 19-year-old kid. I actually think the easiest way I'd describe his first, call it 4 or 5 touches. I actually thought he looked a bit nervous, like he was growing into it before he got a bit of confidence and was more comfortable to actually stand Kimmich up and just burn him a few times, basically. But he's got that in his locker, as you said. bit like Sadio Mane had as well. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, we're excited on this. But I know Romano want us to talk about this. So, Diomande and the situation. I mean, the two big things that have really come out. Ben Jacobs put yesterday, sort of late afternoon, Liverpool are optimistic on Diomande. Red Bull want the player to stay, but he's not said he's going to sign a new deal. Liverpool's latest offer is nearly 100 million. Red Bull Leipzig are wanting 130 million euros. So that was late afternoon. But Fabrizio went a bit further and said Liverpool have had a bid rejected. This was sort of the early hours. Liverpool will bid again for Yan Diomande. There's no doubt Liverpool will be back and pushing on the player's side. They want the player on their side 100%, as Red Bull Leipzig insist they want to keep him. But this he put this in his tweet a little bit earlier. Liverpool are prepared to bid again for Yan Diomande after the opening 100 million got rejected. Red Bull insists to keep Diomande for one more season. The player prefers to leave now. We're kind of, does it not feel like we're in the dance, but just the way it's starting to be phrased about the player prefers to leave, Liverpool have got a deal. Does it feel for you we're moving into the end game with this a little bit?
Yeah, I did say a couple of days ago, I think Liverpool are going to let the game against Germany go ahead, and then we'll see progression, in the deal. It's no coincidence that the news initially broke. I think was it Wednesday night or Thursday? I think it was Thursday night.
Thursday night, yeah.
Yeah, I think we all knew it might get rejected. So now at least we know where both clubs stand. Leipzig have their price. They're now aware where Liverpool, are going to open their bids. But like you said, the wording in these articles is everything. And I keep saying to people, like, if we're going to read these articles, let's look into the wording. Journalists, they're fantastic at hiding, messages in that. And I think that end bit there, that the player prefers to leave now, that's significant because for the past few weeks, we weren't sure if it was going to be PSG or Liverpool, but at least he's now saying the contract isn't going to happen. So, I want to move essentially.
It does feel that way. And even from the Patch Journo side as well, Paul Joyce had this in his sort of match report. Again, similar. Liverpool set to bid in the coming days for Yan Diomande after an 86 million offer fell significantly short of their valuation of 100 million plus. Red Bull saying it will take an extraordinary offer. Does this not just feel like a little bit of bargain hunt where they're like higher, lower? We just are we going somewhere between 86 million, sort of 120, somewhere around maybe a little bit past 100, do you reckon?
Yeah, I think over 100 does it. I think I was saying the other day, probably be 115 with add-ons. It's just a song and a dance now, isn't it? This is what the clubs have to do. It's a bit of posturing. Yeah. Obviously, Leipzig always get the money they want for a player. It might not be, the absolute maximum, but they're very smart in their ability to sell their prized assets essentially. And they're going to get the money. They're not silly. They know Liverpool need a right winger, so they can demand a top fee. I don't think they think that they're going to get the 120 or 130 million euros that's being reported, but it's just a bit of posturing. So I think it's just a matter of time now that we'll start to see news break about a deal in principle or Liverpool's third and final next offer.
It's funny though when you talk about the money, because Grant there 3351 saying paying too much money for a good player. This guy isn't £100 million player. Not learned anything seriously from the Isak and Wirtz. And it's interesting the take on the price. All I'm going to say on this, Sim, is you've seen what's going on in the Premier League market at the moment. That Elliot Anderson is probably going to get done for 120 million or somewhere around that mark. Even last night, Tottenham made an offer for Tonali at 70 million, which is going to be turned down. Is apparently they're going to, again, stories, but back in around the 80 million mark. Is it not a case, though, if you're looking at the Premier League and Anderson in midfield is 120, Tonali is going to be 80 or around that mark? I know it's a different league, but as an attacker, it maybe is understandable why Yan Diomande is being bracketed around that 100 million mark.
Absolutely, and I've said for a few weeks now, I think the market is absolutely it's cooked. It's crazy right now, but you can't do anything about the prices. This is what clubs want to sell at, and at the end of the day, the money in football is just increasing year by year. So 100 million now would have been, let's say, 70 million a few years ago. But it's worth mentioning, the players aren't setting the price. but also there's a shortage of high quality wingers right now. Anyone that's attainable is a gamble, and I think Liverpool are trying to make the most calculated gamble that they possibly can, because the output machines that are wingers, they're already at the top clubs. You know, your Michael Elise's, your Miles Due's, Kvara's, like they're all unattainable, and they're the only sure shot output machines that are available. Everyone else is a gamble. You know, people are talking about, well, you could get Yakuba Minter and Somerville, but I think data-wise, they're nowhere near Yan Diomande. So at the end of the day, he's 19. You're paying for the potential as well as what he is right now. So I think it's just making the most calculated gamble that you possibly can, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. And as you said, Liverpool need a right winger or someone that can play on the right wing. And even those players, the ones that are linked, like, and I'm not knocking them at all because they're talents in their own right, but Minter, Fernandez, Pardo, El Marla's the other one at Cologne, isn't it? They're just not necessarily right wingers who you're comfortable could go there. Is it not as simple as well of when you look at the market, you're right, there's a layer you can't get like an Elise, a Due, Kavicha. We've missed the boat there, annoyingly. But if you look at all the players that are available, isn't it just as straightforward to say is Yan Diomande has probably got the best chance out of them all of being in the world's top 5 attackers in the next few years?
And that's what you're paying for. You're paying for the most calculated gamble, essentially. You know, out of all the names that have been mentioned, some of them look like really good players. I really like that Fernandez Pardo, by the way. But it's getting as close to the a non-failure as possible, essentially. Right. I think everyone else, you know, they don't convince me in terms of output, and I get that Diomande isn't the highest right now either. But I think if you look at the underlying numbers, you know, he's in the percentiles. He ranks very, very highly, and I think that's what the club's looking for. So I don't think it's as much of a gamble as people are saying. He seems very confident. I'm excited about it, to be honest. And I'm not an accountant. I don't know the club's financial situation and what the budget actually is. So I just want the player. I don't really care how much it costs to get him. Let's get him in.
Yeah, there's always the famous saying, if you're not spending your money, it's always a good thing. But talking about attackers, Fabrizio was dramatic with this on his YouTube the other night because he was talking about Yan Diomande, of course, but he also talked about Bradley Barcola, and Ben Jacobs mentioned it as well. Barcola is on the list, but it's the way Fabrizio did it, because he almost did it like as though he's channeling, I don't know what, challenging We Are the Titans or something like that. But he's like, don't forget the name Bradley Barcola. And he really emphasized that as well. Is there a possibility still for you? Because I know people are going to go, nah, Munoz in, Diomande, that's stopped. But are you discounting Barcola yet off that list?
I've said for weeks, I still think they're going to go for Barcola. It's just going to happen later in the window. We're in if we get Diomande in, I think in terms of negotiating with selling people that want to buy any of our players, negotiating with PSG, we're in a very, very good position, especially if we got obviously getting Munoz over the line, and if we can get Diomande over the line. We're not and the wording in that article surrounding Gakpo a few days ago, it was very conspicuous. Like it was however. So so I think we're in a very good position. I just don't think we'll rush to do it. I think we'll focus on other areas, but I would not rule Barcola out. I don't know what the price is going to be, but I've got a feeling it's not going to be as high as people think it is. So it's exciting times, man.
Yeah, and you're right. There's probably a knock-on effect. As Luke says there, that's probably true. Munoz is the Chiesa replacement. You probably expect that to happen. The Gakpo question, not untouchable, as it was phrased by some. But Gavin there saying, and a few others, what about defenders? We need those, and talking about availability. Funnily enough, we mentioned this on our show. There was a lot of digging that went into it. And to be honest, when I heard the name, I didn't even know who it was. But Liverpool have spoken to the agents of Andre Ratiu, I think it's pronounced. And funnily enough, spookily enough, it's also coming from other sources this morning. Now, no one's certain exactly what they will do in defence, but it might be Ratiu. Liverpool surely need a right back of sorts, don't they?
Absolutely. I've said for a while, I don't think the right back market is in the healthiest position right now either. I think if you're looking at some of these players, they're all either overpriced or they're gambles, if I'm being honest. This kid, it's not a kid, is he 27, 28?
Yeah.
And to be fair, the first time I'd heard about him was on your channel, I think yesterday. I think you spoke about him. So I did a little bit of research, and he looks decent, and I think that's the kind of signing we will go for. I don't think it's going to be a name that we all know. I think it's going to be a calculated gamble that we're not spending too much money, and it's someone that can come in and do a job for maybe a couple of seasons, and then we can try and find the eventual replacement. It gives us a 2-year window. I think the right back position is so important. I'm not entirely convinced by Jeremy Frimpong or Conor Bradley. So it is definitely somewhere we can't neglect this year. We were getting exposed constantly there last season, so it's exciting. And I think stats wise and data wise, he does match up with I think it was Hakimi. When people look at the graphs, it was very identical. Obviously, I'm sure there's more data to kind of look at, but it's quite exciting actually.
Yeah, very much an attacking right back. And people have got mixed views on this because Paul's put there, a cheap right back makes complete sense, allowing us time to assess the recovery of Bradley, which is true, and the Frimpong conundrum. The other thing I think with this is, it's easy to play fantasy football a bit, isn't it? And go, let's be honest, Sim. Diomande, Munoz, bring in Barcola. I want Wharton for the progression. I want Buardi or like a prison 6 there. I don't want that right back. I want a Coyote. I want someone like, for all the money it's going to take, they are going to have to make a compromise somewhere, aren't they? They can't all be like top level targets each time. The club, and someone like Ratiu, like you said, maybe you see how it works out with Frimpong, Bradley recovery, probably more importantly. Something, even if it becomes a stopgap, there is probably going to have to be 1 or 2 signings like that, maybe.
And sometimes that's okay to do, because there's no point breaking the bank for a player that clearly isn't good enough. So you're better off just getting an option in that might be just as good, or if not better, for a cheaper fee, to be honest. And like you said, it could just be a stopgap signing just to fill a gap in a squad where we think, Iraola was a right back, so I'm sure that he understands what it takes to bring a good right back in. Again, he's played in the Spanish league. I'm sure, he watches the Spanish league regularly. So it might not be a name that excites people. However, if we can just get the player and the position filled with a player that's showing, promise, I just want a bit of consistency. I don't need a 10 out of 10 every week. If you can give me a 7, 8, I'm happy with that. And that's what we kind of missed last season, to be honest.
Yeah, probably should be noted as well, as you said, Iraola was a right back. His former club was Rayo Vallecano, where Ratiu is. So, you have connections galore there. Midfield-wise, this is interesting because departures we'll talk about. But even Fabrizio mentioned this last night. Got another one. Real Madrid are monitoring Buardi. They've been scouting him for a long time, and they're scouting him in the World Cup. Liverpool face serious competition for the 18-year-old. Now, I don't know if he's just got the busiest agent in the world, because that's us, Real, PSG, Arsenal as well. It's a lot of the big hitters in the market. But we've also had a lot of journos tell us, no, they do like him. He's such a talent, 18 years old. And that's probably why all the big hitters in the market like him as well. I think, is there not just for you a bit like, we're not at the front of the queue like Diomande? There's PSG, there's Real, Arsenal. Would we like him? Yes. Should we get too excited about him just now? Maybe dampen that down a little, do you reckon?
Yeah, and I'd like to rein in my expectations a little bit, my excitement regarding Buardi, just based on the fact that I think we know PSG is his favourite club, and that's the ideal one. However, I think he's fully aware that in terms of minutes, he's probably not going to get there. If you look at the competition he's facing, they've got Zaire Emery, who can't even get in the team, and he looks like a fantastic player. Arsenal might be another one where I just don't see, unless they, sell someone unexpected, I can't see him getting in there. And same for Madrid, which is, again, I think one thing Liverpool have available this year is minutes. So even if we're not your ideal dream club, and even if Arsenal have had a better season, one thing we can guarantee this 18-year-old kid is minutes. We don't have a DM. And I do think he's our first choice, Dave. I think if he wasn't, I think we would have moved on to the second place target. And like people are saying in the chat as well, he's been dominating games at 18, so he's another one. Even though there might be a concern about his age and whether he's, ready to be our, the pivotal midfielder in our squad.
Of course,
he's 18, but he's another one we're looking at for the next 4 or 5 years. So it's exciting, and I've been so impressed by his performances. This is the first time I've watched him live, opposed to watching comps and highlight reels. So it's exciting, man.
It is, and you're right, and it's is he ready? But the club seem quite happy, like Buardi 18, Diomande 19, Jacquet 21. You know, they're happy. Leone, they're happy to go the younger route and give players that time as well. But in terms of players that aren't getting any time, and I think this is almost inevitable as we're going to bring it up in the screen. Over the weekend, they had a bit on Saturday and a bit on Sunday in Gazzetta. They said Curtis Jones consider his time at Liverpool to be over. The midfield and his agents are pushing hard for a move to Inter Milan. They're still at 30 million euros, higher than the Inter's original offer of 20 million euros. And then today, funnily enough, they want him on board by July the 16th when they get their pre-season training underway. And there's even mentioning in Gazzetta about Palestra's their top target, and then it moves on to Curtis Jones. Sim, are we just waiting for this now? Feels like this is almost the new Kirkes. How long's this one been dragging on? Like Inter just sort of hit or get off the box. They just put the money up, surely.
Yeah, and like a few people have been saying to me, oh, maybe he's going to stay. And I'm like, I don't think he is. I think we would have heard more from, the patch journals in terms of, Liverpool do want to offer him a new contract, or Iraola wants to see him in, training, but we've heard nothing. And it seems like it's just inevitable at this point, to be honest. And I do think the club might be happy to sell him just based on the whole pure profit side of things. And what it actually enables them to spend this window. I don't know what your thoughts are on Jones, because I know he's a player that just absolutely splits the fan base in two. Some people love him, some people don't rate him at all. So it's interesting, but I do think the Inter Milan deal is going to happen. It's just a matter of agreeing a fee.
There's two elements to Jones for me. If you think of like an Iraola midfielder, pressers, Curtis Jones, tick. Keeps the ball, Curtis Jones, tick. Progressive passing. People don't say this, and they'll do the lazy, he just keeps his foot. Like, look at Curtis's progressive passing stats. Tick. There's a lot of things, and like homegrown things we need. There's a lot of ticks in Curtis Jones's boxes. Like, no problem there. But as you said, there's a couple of elements on the other side. You book him as profit under PSR, SCR, whatever it is, as that. I'm not saying he's a world beater, but a very valuable member of the squad that way. The thing is, like, do you ever remember that bit in wrestling history where Shawn Michaels is fighting Ric Flair in his last ever match? He kind of has to kick him and he mouths, "I love you, I'm sorry," as he does it. Curtis might just have to be sacrificed a little bit to sort of do everything else a little bit on the book. So I rate him. I think he's a talent. I do think like Iraola could do things with him. But I also think, just as you said, we haven't heard any patch tuners or anyone go, they're still trying to keep him. It's more a case of, will Inter meet the price? Which is kind of like, you're just waiting for this to happen for all those reasons, aren't you?
Yeah, 100%. Also, kudos on the wrestling reference. That was but yeah, I think it's a matter of I don't think the club will even let Iraola make a decision when it comes to Jones. I think it is just I think it's out of his hands. I think they can see financially the benefit, and there's rumours about his wages in January. I don't think we're willing to kind of pay what he would want to be on at this stage of his career. Like you said, I think he's actually a really good player, and I would be interested to see what Iraola could do with him. We spoke about progressive passes. On the data, it looks really good, but I think I would like to see it a little quicker, the progression. Yeah, I think that's always been my only criticism. I think he's got a high ceiling, but I think it is just a matter of time. And maybe he needs a club to go be the main man at, because I can't see it being at Liverpool, but I think we've all waited, and I do like the player for what it's worth, but I do think it's a matter of time now before he's gone.
Which, in a way, might also facilitate other players coming in if ones go out. Although this player, I'm just going to go straight in. I'm glad this is being shot down quite a few times. Mickey van der Ven, of course, played for Holland last night, didn't he, alongside VVD, but hopefully we don't see it in a red shirt. We'll keep it orange. And Ben Jacobs said there, Spurs planning new contract talks. Liverpool currently have no plans to move for Mickey van der Ven. Is there a bit of an element of, it's funny how these links with us were resurfacing just as talk of a contract comes up as well?
Yeah, 100%. And it seems like a play from his agent. Tottenham have been busy in the transfer market this week, this summer. I think they've already signed 2 centre backs, haven't they? So maybe maybe the agent and he just want a bit of assurances that he's still considered as part of the squad. I don't really rate him as highly as a lot of people do, to be honest. And I know he's a Liverpool fan, and that kind of gets people excited. And it was at the time before when we were linked with him before he moved to Spurs.
Right.
But he's not one that I would want, to be honest. He wouldn't be in the top 3 centre backs that I would want to bring. I think the only thing I like about him is his versatility and his recovery pace, but I don't actually see the defensive side. I don't think he's actually that comfortable on the ball, in his own half. I've seen him give the ball away so many times, so I'm glad that this has been shut down, to be honest.
Yeah, not the one we want, especially if you look at other things. I mean, final thing to say, Sim, with just the way it's going, because it's still early in the market. And you've got to remember, the market literally opened a week ago tomorrow. I know stuff happens before, but Iraola in, Victor Munoz in, like he's a player we've signed. You feel like Diomande quite soon. Won't be surprised even if we get something tonight, maybe tomorrow morning on this as well. Of course, there's still a lot more to do, but the last few weeks, it's so different, like the hope we feel now as opposed to what we felt at the end of the season. Oh, Christ, we got to do this again, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think the fan base as a whole was a bit more optimistic. There was like a bit of a dark shadow hanging over us, wasn't there, for the majority of the season? And there was times when I just didn't want to even engage in conversation because I just felt like I was being negative constantly. And that's just not who I am. I actually want to say, good things about, the club that I love, essentially. But it is exciting right now. We had a slow start to the window, but I do think that we're getting a lot of background work done, getting assurances from players, and it's not surprising now that we're just seeing things speed up slightly. I think with Diomande, that was the big one and maybe the hardest one. And, there was talks of competition from PSG, Real Madrid sniffing around. I think United were even linked a little bit as well. So I think that has just been the main focus before we can move on to other priority positions like midfielders. So I think it's just... And it's easier said than done. I think it's just having a bit of patience. Like you said, the window's only been open a week tomorrow. So it's just, we're going to take our time. I think this is the big one. And then I can see us moving on to the midfield, which needs a lot of work too.
Yeah, along with the defence and other positions
Absolutely.
as well. But just in case you missed it, ladies and gents, there's probably the headline for this morning. Liverpool are prepared to bid again for Yan Diomande after the €100 million got rejected. Red Bull Leipzig want to keep him for one more season, but the player prefers to leave now. As per Fabrizio Romano and Paul Joyce and others also reporting, we're waiting for that next bid, be it tonight, be it tomorrow, whenever it comes. But there we go. Plenty going on, plenty of background work, plenty of stories. We will see what develops in the next few days. All it leaves me to say is, for the time, the insight, for getting involved and for answering all our questions, Sim, it is massively appreciated, pal.
No, absolutely. It's been fun. It's been fun coming on. Normally I do late night videos and stuff, so it's quite nice, actually refreshing to have a, early-ish one. Thanks for the chat as well for, having me and, engaging. So it's great, man.
Good show as ever, ladies and gents. Thank you for your chat. Thank you for your interaction. Sunday, the 21st of June. That was another news round for Anfield.